Welcome to the recruitment and retention of low-income fathers in a world gone virtual.
The thing that drives me every day as a dad is him. His real name is Darion, and we call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's affection, attention, knowledge. And there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I think the advice I would give is you don't need to know all the answers. The craziest thing was believing that your dad knew everything. So as a dad, you felt like you had to know everything. You had to get everything right. It's okay to make mistakes. Just do it from the right place. As long as it's coming from love, then, it kind of starts to work itself out. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job. I'll say my kid's pretty dope.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. And if you've had an opportunity to see our dedication videos, they are truly inspiring. So my name is James Worthy, and I'm so very excited to have two incredible guests with me today as we talk about recruitment and retention of low-income fathers in these fatherhood programs, especially during the changes that we've seen during this pandemic. We've gone virtual and things have truly changed for a lot of us. So as I get started today, I'm going to introduce my esteemed colleagues, but the way I want to introduce them is to really let them tell you a little bit about them, their organizations, and I'm going to start off with asking them to answer this question in their introduction. How has your recruitment strategies, the work you've done, been influenced and improved or hurt with the change in this pandemic? How are you really recruiting during this time? And I'm going to go out to none other than Dr. Alicia. I love this young lady from Chicago doing a phenomenal job. So Dr. Alicia, I'll come out to you and allow you to share who you are and to answer that question.
Definitely, we're so glad to be here, and it's just so exciting to be able to participate in this panel. And we're just really excited to be able to be here and to share some of the great lessons that we've had a chance to learn over the years as it relates to engaging fathers, just how important it is to speak up for the voices of dads and have them take an active role in the lives of their parents. And as we're recruiting families, we want to make sure that we make a very specific effort to reaching fathers as well, and to take that to heart, to make those calls, to do the outreach. It takes some creativity, but we have found that when we do that with purpose and insight, that indeed the parents do participate, the fathers do get involved. It just takes a little bit of thought and preparation and strategy, which is why we're here today. We're going to dive into that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. LaHose. I'm very excited to be with you. And I want to just quickly go over to our other esteemed colleague, Mr. Ricky Barr, and for him to also say, during this time, Ricky, you guys have served a lot of people around the state of South Carolina. How have you been able to manage and adapt in this world gone viral with recruiting and retaining men in the programs and services that you offer in South Carolina? So I'll throw it to you to introduce you and your program.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Good to see you, Dr. Alicia, out there in the Midwest. Good to be here. Good to see everybody in the fatherhood world. James, South Carolina is a vast state. If you were here eating barbecue in the 864, they would tell you there's ketchup. In the 803, they would tell you there's mustard. And in the 843, they would tell you the sauce needs to be vinegar. And so when times change, we had to pull in troops from all of those areas and say, what's the best way to handle this? And one thing we know about handling crisis is flexibility is the name of the game. So we were stuck on being a palm tree and not an oak tree. And how can we mobilize and still keep people involved, active, and engaged? So once we cut off recruitment fundamentally for safety reasons, we had a motto called "Serve the Keepers Deeper." We will say that we normally historically would have served more, but this time we decided to go deeper. I would tell you this year our outcomes were stronger than they would have been historically, even though that we were probably 40% off of our historical goal. Sometimes it's better to look at your situation and not necessarily look at the coast and the waters and everything surrounding you. Look at how can you adjust your sails to be effective in the moment. So everything we did was about adjusting so we could be better sailors in this time of turbulence. So we served the keepers deeper. We went harder with who we had, and I think we got better because of it.
Wow. And one of the things, serve the keepers deeper, that's one of those concepts. And I know after talking to Dr. Alicia, that is where so much of this whole understanding of how to recruit people and how to retain them come from. So I want to ask, just Dr. Alicia, from your vantage point, being able to quote unquote serve the keeper deeper, how do you use that mindset or that philosophy to really meet people and get these guys to get involved? What does that mean from your organization to really serve this gentleman and meet him where he is? If you would share how you guys really do that.
Well, our name is Family Bridges, so we're thinking about a bridge, and you think being in one point and you want to get to the other point. And so how do we walk along that pathway and help people have that journey of growth? Well, if we start by just giving people everything that we want to impart, all the knowledge, all the good skills, and just pour, and we don't stop and actually take a moment to understand who we're serving, then we'll miss the boat, we'll miss an opportunity. So we need to actually take the time to know who it is we're serving. What are the needs of the dads? Where are they in their growth journey and their job placement? What are their current needs? What are their struggles? What is it that they care about? Are they caring about being a provider? Do they want that pride and they're having some struggles? And so we have to actually start where they're at first and then walk along that pathway instead of just dumping down the great resources and research and wonderful outcomes. We just are so desperate to get that content into the lives of those we serve. But if we don't have that relationship, that journey of growth is not going to happen. It's going to fall apart. So we need to first take the time, understand where people are at, what transitions are they experiencing, where's their heart, what angst do they have, develop that relationship. And when we get to know them and understand their need, then we can speak to them. And more often than not, then our content and our programs and our services will intersect. But if we just pour without having that bi-directional experience of relationship, have them speak to us and then be able to meet that need, then we really miss out an opportunity to serve.
Into those relationships. So Ricky, I want to throw it over to you because I know you guys build a huge, I can see some of the fathers in the background on your picture there. Those are actual fathers that have graduated from your program. How do you build these relationships in the recruitment process? I mean, I don't know you. I'm a guy out here struggling. How do you really build a relationship with me, especially now? Sometimes has to be virtual. So what are some of the things you guys did to keep being able to build those relationships, meet guys where they were, and encourage them to participate in what you were doing? What are some of the innovative things you did?
Well, one of the main things we did is we actually really got around the table and said, how can we be effective with the people we have kept, grow them from the foundation that they're standing on so they'll be further along and more, should I say, better adjusted as time flies by. So we OFA was even nice. They gave us some budgetary flexibility, and we were like, okay, so what do we really do? So we found the things that people had in common during a pandemic and turned it into a plandemic. So how can we plan in the middle of this pandemic? So there are a couple things that people had in common. A, we're spending more time together. And a lot of fathers who were non-custodial, all who didn't have a job, all of a sudden became custodial, just like that overnight. Bam, we in here. And so we actually did. Matter of fact, it was April of last year. We did Good Things on Good Friday. We made these father-child activity bags, and it was everything in there from chalk to coloring books to blowing bubbles, because the part of in the middle of a storm, it's good to create memories. The bottom line is we don't forget what our father has done for us negatively or positively. So, and the whole mentality behind the father-child activity bags were for fathers and their kids to be engaged at this time and create memories. My favorite thing in the bag was a pot that actually decomposed once you plant it in the ground, where you could have seeds and plant something and bring something alive. Playing dirt. James, you remember, used to make mud pies. Literally play in dirt, do things where you don't have to really spend money. We've made our society to dollar driven and not value driven on people and relationships. So how do we capitalize on that? Then another thing we did with the flexibility budgetarily was the other thing that people have in common outside of relationship is food. So whether you in Maryland or whether you in Illinois, we all ate. Some of y'all overeat, some of us undereat, but everybody eat. And so we literally turned to that group. We have food. Food is one of those common places, and we usually let the father set the menu. So literally, it was once a week we do drive through at all of our 14 locations across the state. So if they needed a plate, they could still get engaged. Good thing about our curriculum is that we have PowerPoints and workbooks, so we can really turn around and put our PowerPoints on a virtual platform and have fathers come pick up their workbooks and then go over them with the intervention specialist. So what we did is that I think we put more fuel in our gas tank, and our fatherhood gas tank, to go so we could take the fathers farther, if you will, in a different environment. I think we would have been very hurtful, James, if we would have said, "Hey, man, good luck. We'll see when the lights come back on." What good are you programmatically? What good are you organizationally if you're only good in good seasons? So we really had to dig deeper and see what we could do creatively, and at the same time teach our staff and the fathers is that you can't have palm tree motions, and you just can't expect things to be like they always are. We exist because things are not ideal. So we want things to be ideal. We're really not that good organizationally if we want ideal situations to be ideal. We exist because things are not ideal. So how do we fix?
Wow. And you know what, Ricky, as I work with so many around the country, that rings so true, that the ones that made it could change. But from both of your point of view, and Dr. Alicia, I'm gonna come to you, both of you manage and train and work with staff. And people get stuck in, hey, I don't know how to deal with this change. So, Dr. Alicia, what were some, from a leadership standpoint, and something you could share with those of us who may be on the call today or on the WebEx today, who deal with helping people change and adapt to this new world we live in? What were some maybe things that you had to uh, uh, trying to overcome to make it work? If you would share that with us.
Yes, we had to really come together and come around this mantra called lead yourself first. So we shed a lot of things that we had as an organization and focused on 3 priorities to be able to move forward, because there was just a lot going on and we had to just focus on pivoting like the rest of the world was. Well, in the midst of that, it did feel like we were sitting in a football game and we were all doing a wave or a game. And so it was like a wave of fear and wave of anxiety and depression and and grief and anger, and throughout the year, right? We just all experienced these waves. Well, we had to tap that, figure out what was going on individually, be a little bit more vulnerable as leaders, talk about our purpose, talk about our why, but just really recognize that we were all in this and experiencing this while at the same time delivering services and reaching people that were dealing with an incredible amount of grief, havoc, disarray, disruption, scheduling of changes. But if we are not taking care of ourselves well, and we're not recognizing that we're also in this wave, then fatigue sets in, burnout sets in, and we're not able to do good work the way we would want to in terms of our values. And so we set an agenda of priorities first, let's lead ourselves first, and did that continuously, not only for our staff, but for our affiliates and partners, offering things like, what is trauma? How do we deal with that? So the technology, the education aspect of it, what's going on with us, what is fear, what is anxiety, all these things, how to deal with stress. But then just practical things that we did, like funny hat day, everybody wear their favorite sports gear, for an hour or whatever, and just come to a staff meeting and you had to show up with your favorite sports. Or we even had an art therapist come in and do some artwork for those that were art, just to do a little bit of relaxation as well. So a lot of intentionality in ensuring that our team was taking care of themselves. We actually said in the next 2 weeks, everybody has to take a mental health day and put that in there, because again, how are we going to serve others if we're not taking care of ourselves? So you have to really put some thought in it in terms of educational aspects, but very practical ways that people can then be cognizant and really take care of themselves. It takes some thought and it takes some purpose. You got to make it happen. But at the end of the day, I do believe that helped our team be able to be better agents of change for others and usher hospitality to others, because they were able to give because they had been taken care of first.
Wow. As I hear that, and Ricky, I'm coming to you because I know you had to adapt some changes with staff and all of that. But Dr. Alicia, what I really walk away from is, you know, if as a leader, your people don't feel you care about them, it's hard for your people to go care about others for you. And I just hear that self making sure people are healing themselves, take care of themselves, because as much anxiety as our clients are going through, as the people we serve, our own staff, ourselves, we're going through that. So I truly love that. Ricky, I know you had to do some juggling of staff and retraining, and you don't have a staff that's all virtual educated people. So what's some of the things you had to do and overcome to just help people be in their best position to win? I know you're a sports guy. You want to put that player in the best position. So how did you do that with your staff?
Well, I think you gotta listen first, and you gotta survey the land. So leadership. If you just change the dynamic of the word, is led, so it's a heaviness, but it's a ship because of mobility. And leadership is only good as relationship. So I got people in their 70s, and I got people as 24. Now, hopefully, they don't tell me the exact same thing. But one of our guys in the 70s had, he had a bypass. I got to talk to him and say, hey man, how you doing? Let me be concerned about your health, and whether we want to say it or not, we are really in the health profession because we're trying to help heal and the health of the family. And so if that does not start internally, how do we expect to demonstrate it externally to people who we're actually serving? So if I express no care and concern, I'm gonna get somebody right now because they're in the room right now staring at me. But I got a young lady in the room. She's ace. She's really, really good. But she got a little boy, and I can't be like, hey, well, he on his own. So I gotta say, T, how can we balance this? How can we kind of take this seesaw and live in what I call the stability of instability, where every day is not identical, but at the same time, we are in contact enough, we're connected enough, we're in relationship enough to balance internally so we can be effective externally. Were we perfect at it all the time, James? Doc? No, we were not. But the bottom line is to strive in that right direction allows your servers to be well. In other words, you can't expect to serve good if the servers aren't well. We've been in those restaurants where the waiter look kind of grouchy, like, I don't know if I want her bringing my food. I don't know if I want him bringing. He don't look too. Do you like your job? So if the servers aren't healthy, they can't serve well. So if we misprioritize what we're doing and not stand on fatherhood and family internally first, we can't expect the external or people who come to us, even not just for the content, not for the curriculum, but for a demonstration of what good functionality looks like, we can't be effective. So I always start with home base. You know, we went from staff meetings once a month to once a week, but we shortened them. You know, and we started every meeting off with, "Hey, how you doing? You know, you good? Let's get the goal of you right, and then we'll worry about the goal of what we need to hit." Because if your goals are all over the place, and you know your mother's hurting, or you got somebody in the hospital, I'm like, well, you know, we got to get this report done. True, but I need you in a good space to write the report, and just don't keep typing COVID in the report. We gotta make sure that we're in a good spot. So it's checking in a lot, making sure that people were tight, first of all, with their family, first of all, really dealing with the turbulence of the moment, and that they had some sort of balance in their life.
Okay, so now it's becoming very prevalent why both of your organizations were stellar, even though during the difficulty were stellar through this process, because the, the the things that you're communicating to your client, you're doing for your staff. And I want to talk because we had a chance to talk a little bit. And Ricky, you brought up something that, and you've said it a couple times, and I just think it was huge aha moment for me about food. Because I know in all the fatherhood programs, they're like, can we serve food? Can we serve food? But you broke down your service model in a acronym about food called bread. Would you just kind of give, and I hope everybody can get the aha moment I got from this. After 30 years of doing this work, I still get some big aha moments. So would you share the bread concept and what that meant and how that is built into your service models?
Well, our bread concept is actually our recruitment model. It's built off the theory is that people tell people where good bread is. In other words, if I'm in Illinois, if I'm in Maryland, you know, James, you've done it to me before. Hey man, we need to go over here. We need to go to the farmer's table. They got good food. So the balance of commonality brought bread up. So I know Joseph Stillner was in the first session. He knows this well. But bread means, first of all, is this program is what I'm coming to, is it beneficial? You know, men just don't do sleepovers. We not just gonna keep coming to group and doing singing kumbaya. Does this benefit me? Secondly, is it relational and resourceful? In other words, in the scale of people that are sitting in there to serve me, is it relational and resourceful? So our average age in South Carolina is 33. Well, everybody I hire can't be in their 20s, and everybody I hire can't be in their 30s. So even though somebody may have an intervention specialist or a case manager, he may gravitate to one person in the organization because he can build that relationship. So we try to hire across the spectrum because we're also trying to engage in a family context. So is it beneficial? Is it relational? Is it resourceful? So that's two R's in there, just in case you were trying to say I was misspelling stuff. But are the relationships resourceful? If the relationships are not resourceful, they are just relations without ships. So are the relationships resourceful, and are they encouraging? We live in a society, particularly where most men, you know, are, if we're deeply honest, are unconsciously psychologically depressed. So, and there are really, as far as I'm concerned, only two types of people in the world. Either you putting courage in or you taking courage out. So is this relationship encouraging? Is the organization active? In other words, the activity of your organization has to be bigger than group, has to be bigger than just checking in with a person. Every 6 weeks in our programmatic model, we have what we call an activity, whether it's a father-child activity, whether they're going to the zoo, whether they're going to, whether they're doing the fatherhood Olympics, whether they're going to a bike trail. In other words, is it active? Am I getting something extracurricular out of it? And finally, is it directional? Is it pointing me in such a way where there is direction? And that direction is not just what we have, it's also where he wants to go. So that's bread: beneficial, relational, resourceful, encouraging, active, and directional.
And you know, it was funny because when in our conversation, it just hit me that any organization I've seen that's really serving at a high level, these tenants show up. So then I'm having a conversation with Dr. Alicia, and your tenant showed up, and she spoke about relationship building and showing people value the value of the service. So, Dr. Alicia, I'm gonna come to you. Talk about how you guys communicate. I want everybody to get this. How you communicate the what's in it for me, the value proposition of relationship work. Would you share a little bit of that? I think everybody could walk away with extra help with that.
Yeah, well, there's two basic needs that we all have: being known and being valued. And if we miss that, then we miss speaking to the heart of the individual and catching them where they're at. That's what we're all after. And so when you're working with a dad in that experience of relationship, are you letting them know that they're valued and that they're known? That means that if I am on the phone inviting them to participate in a program or knocking on the door, how am I communicating that to them? Am I dismissing them? Am I going straight to the mom or the grandmother or somebody else in the family without really honoring who he is? So you got to like tune in and focus in on the individual and make sure that you're having that in that relationship conversation and being able to activate that which resonates with them and taps into that core need. And that usually is with the transference of that relationship. People will read it if you're faking it. People will read it if you're just trying to sell something or ticker off a number. They'll read it off, write it off, and they won't respond in the same way that if you're being authentic and being able to recognize them. That takes listening to their story, understanding where they're coming from, getting a picture of their current circumstance, being able to validate that, and then egging them forward towards that journey of change. If you don't, again, start with where they're at and honor them, whether or not you disagree or agree with some of the decisions that they're making, but being able to sit with them and hold that is the work that then creates trust. And when you then take that time to build that trust, then folks are going to follow through, and it is going to be that currency of change.
So, and I'm loving the chat box. I don't want to forget that I'm having such a great conversation with you guys. I almost forgot we're at a conference and we have a number of people that are asking questions. One of the questions, and I'm going to start to ask our audience to gear up, because I want them to really be able to get the most out of the time with you guys. So I'm going to ask them to start to ask questions in the chat box, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But I do want to let someone know, ask what the E stood for in bread, and that's encouraging. And I appreciate that, because I've heard some comments, and I'm gonna throw this out for either one of you to answer first. But I've heard this comment about meeting people where they are. And I think we in a broad sense get that. But I'd like, Ricky, I've seen how you work. Been blessed to be in South Carolina. And sometimes when you're meeting a guy, you looking like, $2 million suit, and he may not be there, but you're still able to meet him where he is. Can you really talk about what that mindset is to meet someone where they are, even though you don't look like where they're at? Does that make sense? So if you would talk to that, Dr. Alicia, I'm gonna come to you, because you're Dr. Alicia. So Ricky, I'm gonna come to you first, and then we're gonna start to pick up some questions from our audience.
There's a text in Corinthians that said, "I became all things to all men that I might win a few." And so, so I'm gonna go old school, because Patrick Patterson might be on here. When we started out in this work, we were doing crossovers. Now right now we just look at the net. We can't jump, we can't slap the glass, but we literally, if I'm going to the block, James, this tie won't be there by the time I hit the corner. And so if I'm in the governor's office and I'm trying to get him to support fatherhood, I'm right where he is, Mr. McMaster. But if I'm down at the community center, I'm Tupacing. I won't deny it. I'm a straight rider. And so your gumbo of your organization has to be rich enough so everybody can eat. the good thing about gumbo is that you might not like okra, but you might like tomatoes. You might not like tomatoes, but you might like rice. You know, you might not like sausage, but you might like shrimp. So if I'm in New Orleans, I got to make sure I got sausage and shrimp. If I'm in South Carolina, I might can just do sausage. So I think it's critical, like I said earlier, that we hire in a plethora. I hire a range of people because I've had some men in my database 64 years old. And I've
Mm,
had some men in my database that are 17. So I can't play to a 64-year-old a download. I got to give him an 8-track. So
mhm.
we got to talk Temptations. We got to go to Detroit. But when I go here, I got to turn around and talk Migos. And I got to know who on my staff is savvy enough that we can take the richness of the room and everybody can eat. Everybody benefits. Is my facilitator skilled enough? When they walk in our offices, you know, if you go to, I'll use Joseph, he was on earlier today, but you know, they have a room that's really a man cave, but then they also have a place of literature. They also have computers. So I think sometimes as we build the smorgasbord of service, we have to think holistically and not aim so much at one guy where we only can fish in one pond. There are streams, there are rivers, there are lakes, and there are oceans. The question is, how well are our tools so we can catch what we need to catch?
Mm. I hope everybody took notes on that one because that there was so much in that. Dr. Leisha, I'm gonna come to you because you some people say that, well, we don't know if women can do the job or all of this, and there's so much literature to show that ladies, women are probably as strong, if not stronger, in fatherhood work. So how do you meet people where they are? You're not a man, you're the doctor. How do you meet? How do you teach that to everyone?
Well, you do that emotionally, socially, in the different realms, but also building a team that then is able to carry the programs. I had a facilitator once leading a co-parenting class, and he came back really excited. And he said, we were leading this program because the dad and the mom, they weren't together, but they were together in this workshop. They're struggling because they're about the shoes of the kid. And apparently the dad was just filling up the son with, the best and best of shoes, like these $150 shoes, and she couldn't keep up, and it was creating all sorts of distress. And so she kept going, like, what is this about? Like, and then one of the reasons they ended up breaking up apparently was because of shoes. Financially, he just kept buying shoes. And you're like, what in the world? Well, started digging through our program. We have a model called growth, and we go through this face model and talk about feelings. And, feelings and emotions are not always something that, particularly for men, you see it for both men and women, but it's not something that people automatically go to. And so they kind of have to break apart a circumstance and be able to dissect what is it emotionally, what's going on in the heart. And so he started doing that. And then where's that latent energy coming from? Oh, all these assumptions, these ideas, these stories. Well, this guy started sharing how, as a young kid, financially had a lot of problems, had a lot of struggles, and had to go to meet with not very good shoes. In fact, he was trying out for sports and he wasn't able to make it because the shoes fell apart.
Mm.
He's had the story of just not being able to achieve that which he wanted to achieve, and his goals being derailed as a kid because he just did not, they just didn't have it financially. And so as he grew up and he was working and he was able to provide, shoes provided something for him. It gave him just more meaning. Now right? You hear that story and all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, I get it. Why then he was not only doing that for himself, but he wanted to almost step on the gas and even almost over provide for his son. And then this created all sorts of disarray. Well, if we wouldn't have taken the time, this facilitator wouldn't have taken the time and asked him his story and dug in and encouraged him, everybody would have dismissed it and said, man, come on, stop buying shoes. Like, what are you doing? And just have straight up provided 1, 2, 3 advice that logically, sequentially might have made sense, but it would have been void of the story and the richness, which got to the heart of it. So whether it's you as an organization and you're leading it and you've got other women and you're facilitating other men, you got to encourage them to go there, to go to the heart, because more often than not, people want to go. men want to go. They need to go there. It discovers more of the story, more of the reality that then can tap into the root of an issue, which then can lead to healing.
And we got a few minutes left, guys, and I think we're down to about 8 minutes left, and I don't want to lose anything from the audience. The conversation in the chat is so rich, it's amazing, and a lot of affirmation going on. If anyone has any questions, throw them in, because this whole thing of serving low-income fathers. I learned something a long time ago, and I just share this from my own. When I started this work 30 some years ago, two things were asked to me. One was, what's the difference between cocky and confident? And because as a very young man, I was doing well. I'd gone to Penn State University. So it was thought that I couldn't work with people because I had a confidence level, a cockiness level that would let me not connect to the client. And one of the things that I told them, I said, don't hear my confidence as being cocky, but understand my confidence is coming from escaping what people are going through. And that has helped me so much because I'm a shirt and tie guy. And Ricky, I used to remember on street outreach, this before the pandemic, on street outreach, James Worthy, if you saw me on my regular time, and Patrick Patterson on here and plenty of my other partners, many of them had never seen me in anything but a shirt and tie. Whether we were at an old program, we were playing kickball. James Worthy was umpiring in a shirt and tie. If I was on the street talking to guys in a shooting gallery, if anybody knows what that is, that's something different. I was shirt and tie. So I was who I was, but I understood where we were and I understood where people were. And that's why this is so important, because your heart, what you're sharing, your heart is coming through. And that's where I think most of us, if we want to think retention, we got to think retention from the beginning. We got to feed them, Ricky. That's what I heard. You got to have the relationship with them if they're going to stick with you. So I'm just so excited. If I don't see any, I know I got hosts looking at things. I want you guys to know that many of the things that you're hearing here, they're resources that we're going to have for you to be able to continue this information, to get this information, to meet and talk with these guys. But I'm going to throw one last question out there. We got about a little under 6 minutes, and I want to ask this one question. And I'll start with Dr. Alicia. In all the work, oh, there we go, Miss Pat Littlejohn. Pleasure. See, that's
James,
a blessing.
I did this for a reason, because when Dr. Alicia talked about women and richness, and I got to be honest, even at the time we're in now, you show quality programming by how you live your lives. Pat knows when I need to be in the room by myself. And I know that it's like, okay, this is a different conversation, and I need to exit stage left. And I think one, if you're really going to do this work well, you have to devoid yourself of the stage and stay focused on the purpose. So when it's time to go to the state legislature, they like blondes up there. So I think, and she'll fuss at me later for dragging her in here. But I think as we develop and as we evolve organizationally, we have to develop holistically and make sure fatherhood has a wide frame. Because Jay, I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna tell you something that most people don't know. Everybody got a father.
I didn't know that.
I'm telling you, it's everybody got one. And when we deal with the fact of that common thread and then find the slice of bread that fits that man, then man, we are one of the most valuable resources on the planet, period. And this is not a color issue. This, truth be told, it's really not even a class issue. It is, what happened to me? What am I doing? And how do I want it to be? And fatherhood is the seed for that, Reed.
Man, look, you first of all, one of my heroes, Miss Pat Littlejohn, jumped in. But I want to talk to you because this ability to be flexible, nimble, and all of that, it shows in your leadership. And I know moving forward, everyone's going to have parts of what we adapted to in the pandemic. We're going to have that maybe move forward. So I want to ask a specific question. How do you see Zoom or these virtual platforms being a part of your business model moving forward, coming out of the pandemic? How do you see that? And I'll go to you, Dr. Alicia, then I'm gonna go to you, Ricky, and hopefully Pat will stay with us. I don't want her to sneak away. So go ahead, Dr. Alicia.
Like this. Well, I would just want to say relationships are critical for change. And the technology needs to facilitate that, and it does. We've seen that there's more access, that people are able to actually engage even more because of Zoom and WhatsApp and Facebook Live and all of these things. We've actually seen more completion rates in terms of our retention because it's removed a lot of barriers that we otherwise had to be even more creative to get people to participate in our programs. And so for us, it's hybrid. We're able to facilitate training a little bit more, have fathers and individuals participate from different parts of the country and world. So it's actually made us more flat in that we are able to have a father from one area in Chicago or meet another father from Phoenix and another one from the different cities. And so that's been really encouraging and mobilizing and rejuvenating. But then that doesn't take the place of the face-to-face. We're all anxious to be able to go back to that opportunity. And so for us, it's looking more hybrid, right? Where can we provide opportunities for that space, for that camaraderie, for that conversation to happen in the Zoom world? But how can we also add value to whether it's a school or a church or a community where they are already starting to open up and have those face-to-face experiences? And for those that are just uncomfortable with going back out, that we're able to do both, or even just can't because of the work schedule. So being able to have a lot of the online classes. And so for us, we've been able to put our programs online in Spanish. We haven't done it in English, but that's been our majority of the services that we offer. And so it provides an opportunity for people to take it on their own. Ideally, we want them to be part of a group, but we just want to be able to increase access. And so it facilitates training, it facilitates engagement, but we know that that's not the only path, right? We want to get to the day where we can also be together and have that face-to-face experience that we crave for.
Well, I would throw this to you, Ricky, but I'm gonna throw a last twist. We got 1 minute left, and Ricky, you are the king of some incredible one-line, hard-hitting statements that get you. What would you share? One last thought you would share with everybody on here about really increasing your recruitment and increasing your engagement in this new world? What's one bit of advice you would leave us with? And I'm gonna leave it to you.
I'm gonna go back to how we started, man. And it's really with the bread model. If you do really, really good with one guy, they go get another and another and another and another. Dr. Alicia said it earlier. Joseph Stillner said it earlier. That they can smell if it's really on you. So if it's really on you, and you take your time, you do the 3-3 model. You give them time, let them talk, and when he needs to tear, let him tear. And you let that space be so safe that when he walks out into the world, he know that he's been fed not just from what you did with him with curriculum, but he's been fed relationally, he's been fed spiritually, and somebody actually listened to him. Some of our best work in fatherhood, James, and you know this, is because we just shut up. I mean, if the average man has nobody to talk to, and then they say, I heard Patrick say earlier that, we don't talk. Well, the bottom line is if we master listening, then we can master lifting. And so fatherhood needs to lean in and say, man, we hear you, man, we see you, man, we accept you, man, we'll walk with you. And I think so much we live in a real loud world. People either are TikToking, they Instagramming, they Facebooking, they tweeting, whatever else they doing out there, and everything is turned all the way up. The only time people seem to turn their music down in their car is when they're trying to back up and park. I don't know how that correlates, but it's like the world is turned up so loud. Fatherhood needs to be so effective in listening, and then we can help elevate the family. I believe in that with all of our might. We tell our facilitators that if you do most of the talking in group, you're probably not that effective. That in a 6 week window, your talking needs to reduce itself every week. If you're talking as much in week 1 as you are in week 6, you probably have done something wrong, and you're looking for a platform more than you're looking to change people's lives. I think we need to lean in holistically with our ears, listen well, and the better we listen, the better we can lift, because we know how to lift them because we heard them.
James,
Well, yes,
yeah.
go ahead, Dr. Alicia. I know this is go.
Real quickly, what he said, the word of mouth is so powerful. And I would just take it one notch forward and I say, let's make the ask of those champions to have experienced it to invite others. Because sometimes they don't think about it themselves. And if we don't ask, we don't get. So being very prescriptive and disciplined within your organization to identify those, go-getters, the people that are just stars, that are, doing tens and excellent marks on your work and participating each time, meet with them. They're going to be your best advocates, but you got to ask them. If you don't ask them, then you're missing out an opportunity.
Well, wow. I think if we had 2 mics, I'd drop both of them. And I want to thank you. I know this session, we're 3 minutes over, but I'm glad this session I get to host. Because everybody here know this, that we don't want you to walk away empty-handed. So everything that you've heard this session, all of them will have resources, PowerPoints, and all of those will be available to you. But what I want you to do, we have something called a social hangout, where, think about this, guys. Let's say that we were all at the hotel right now doing this, and you all walked out into the lobby. You see Mr. Ricky Barr, and you say, "Oh, Rick, I'd like to talk to you. It's a pleasure to meet you." Or you see Doc. So what we're going to do that exact same thing, but we're going to do it virtually in our social hangout. So I'm going to ask, when you log into the social hangout rooms, and let's continue to meet, greet, share, get to know, so that these conversations, these incredible words of wisdom can all be used and all can enjoy each other's company while we get stronger serving dads. Dr. Alicia, Ricky, thank you so much. And I think I'm going to go ahead and be quiet and turn it over to our moderator for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This session has now ended.